Welcome to this presentation entitled Community Marketing and Management at Your Best and Worst of Times, a title that just rolls off the tongue and definitely fits on a presentation slider. My name is Malin Castegren. I am a product marketing manager at Paradox Interactive. And I've been with Paradox now for 5 years, which makes that my second longest relationship ever, and the longest one I married. Ah, thank you. Somebody told me don't try to make jokes in the business lane, it doesn't work. But I'm thinking this is mostly community managers and marketing people, and we have fun, right? Good. Okay, cool. So I have about 30 slides to go through, and I've never managed to do it on time, so we're gonna kick off. I'm gonna tell you what a product marketing manager is, because it's kind of a weird title. What it means is that I am responsible for coming up with, creating, and executing the marketing campaigns for a selected amount of titles at Paradox Interactive, and to make sure that we meet our sales goals, and that we make the best possible foundation for the game to get to market. So I work with games from before they're even signed until they're released, and a couple of years post-release. But I started as a community manager. And Paradox Interactive, oh, the clicker works. If you don't know about us, we are a Swedish-based publisher. Currently, we are 300 employees with an internal development studio, called Paradox Development Studio, that are mostly famous for our grand strategy titles. Crusader Kings 2, Europa Universalis 4, and Stellaris are some of the more notable ones, together with Hearts of Iron. But we're also a publisher, and we publish third-party games together with different studios. So we just launched Surviving Mars last week. Jet lag, Stockholm is several hours away. Together with Hermimont Games, and I am currently working on Battletech together with Harebrained Schemes. We've also launched Pillars of Eternity together with Obsidian, and one of the games I'm gonna cover a lot in this talk, which is City Skylines together with Colossal Order. And I said that Paradox is a company of 300 people. That wasn't the case when I started 5 years ago. Back then, we were around 80 people. I think I am employee 73. And the company has changed a lot, and it has changed how we do marketing, because we started our marketing based in our community. And then we kind of grew into a company that had actual marketing budgets that we could do bigger things with. Oh, right, I'm getting ahead of myself. What are these two games I'm going to be covering a little bit? These are the two games I'm going to be talking about a lot today. Europa Universalis 4 is a grand strategy game where you play a nation in the world and you attempt world dominance. It's developed by our internal development studio, Paradox Development Studio. And then City Skylines, which is a city builder game currently available for PC, Xbox, and PlayStation. It released 4 years ago now, and it is a city builder game. It's kind of straightforward. But what is community marketing and community management? That just sounds like somebody is trying to make fetch happen. It's kind of a weird hybrid of buzzwords, but this is where I should have talked about the history of Paradox. Our community is actually older than our company, which is kind of weird, but we went through a couple of iterations. Currently, our community is around 3 million people just on our own channels. When we started when I started 5 years ago, it was way smaller. We were looking at 500,000 to 1 million. And we work with something where we take the knowledge that we have from community management and community marketing and bring that into our marketing campaigns. So we use what we learn from community management and make that translate into marketing. And we do that in 3 different ways. It's either when we try to market a game to a new audience. So a game where we already own the community, but we have a new audience that we would like to reach with it, which is the case for Europa Universalis 4. Or a new game where we don't have the audience, but there is a clear lookalike product, like City Skylines and SimCity. Or a title if you have a completely new game that fills a hole in the market. So I'm going to talk about how you can reach a community or new audience for these 3 types of games, how to utilize what you can learn about that community to make your marketing competitive. And why should you do it? This was supposed to be the takeaway for the entire talk, and I put it here, so you can technically leave after this slide. I wouldn't advise it, but you could. Marketing with a community in mind can make your campaigns competitive even if your wallet is not. If you have a strong community presence, if you know what kind of asset works with your community, either the community that you own or the intended community that you want or your intended audience, you can make yourself competitive even if you can't pay your way to success. Because most of us here aren't the big five, and we probably can't just pay for the space that we need in order to get the game to be successful. We need to actually work with other tools. I can talk about marketing as basically how to create an audience. So forever, but I'm going to focus on one specific thing, and that's language. When we talk about community management and marketing at the best of worst of times, an important thing to keep in mind is that the best of times don't just happen. It's something that you need to work for and you need to build a platform for. So we're going to take a look at how you build that platforms for the 3 different categories that I mentioned earlier. Language is one of the most important parts of building your platform. And a language in this context isn't just your spoken language or written language. It's everything you use in order to communicate something to an audience. So it's everything from images to music to GIFs or actual words or single words. It could just be the tags that you use for your game. That is part of your game language. And the language of a community can be very different and very individual based on the community. And if you can replicate a community language, you're kind of already, you get a couple of extra steps. Sorry, Swedish. I'm gonna take a breath and just keep going with this. It helps you to gain an advantage on the market. Sorry, I'm really nervous. I've actually never done one of these talks before. So study the language of your intended audience. What this means is if you are looking at your own community, make sure if you are a marketing person, talk to your community manager. What is your community actually saying and doing? What are their in-jokes? This is an in-joke that we have from our grand strategy community. They usually say that because they spend so much time playing our games, they are always gonna be alone, or their wife got really mad at them, or their partner got really mad at them because they were staying up all night playing CK2. So we made these very specifically catered Valentine's card that was based on their inside joke, which worked because we knew their language and they understood it, because it was really easy for this to be interpreted as sort of dismissive if you don't know the community it's coming from. Marketing towards an existing community was something that we did when we launched EU4. So we already had our grand strategy community, and they were big and they were really excited about a new product, but we were seeing some discourse around our grand strategy titles that are basically, I'm too dumb to play grand strategy games. I can't play them, I'm not smart enough. And that's a big problem for us because we want more people to get into our games. We don't want to feel that they're too dumb. And this was something that we kept seeing on different places, both on forums, on Reddit, and other places. So what we did was we created this marketing asset. It was originally titled, Are You Too Dumb to Play Europa Universalis 4? But we changed it later to So You Think You Can't Play Empire Building Games. It's basically that fear that they are too dumb to play it addressed in a flowchart that also actually talks about the features of our game in a really creative way. And we made sure that this was up everywhere where our fans were and where these discussions were happening. So not just on our own forum, but also on Reddit and other sub-forums. So we actually could share this broadly with our audience. Another thing that we noticed that the community really liked to do, the main thing they talked about together was user stories. They were talking about their alternate history stories, their conquests. And this was a direct thing that we used when we made our trailers. So we basically made our trailers based on the stories we saw on our forums. of an alternate history Sweden where we never conceded Denmark, and suddenly we are an empire. A good thing to keep in mind with this, though, is to do it with finesse. These are two different kind of assets where the flowchart is very internal. If you're not part of this community, it's going to be really hard to understand why we're doing this. But we kept the announcement trailer or the release trailer really accessible. So you can watch that. You've never seen anything from EU4 before. You can understand what's going on in it. And make sure you differentiate these types of assets, because otherwise you will accidentally make stuff that are too niche for a broader market. So that's how we worked with a community that we already owned. And that's easy, right? You already have the insights, you have your community managers, you have your forums, you know what they like. But what about the people that are new to you? What if you have a game that doesn't have a lookalike product in the market and where you don't own the community? What do? Something that we like to do is to talk about what your game gives to players. This is using City Skylines as an example. City Skylines wasn't a gap in the market type of game. It had a very easy competitor to look at. But we're not just talking about your game. That's the important thing. Like, don't just benchmark or look at the community surrounding your competitor's game or different games. Look at what your game actually does for a player. City Skylines is, you can build and manage a city. That's our core player loop, and that's what people really like, so we have some clear competitors there with SimCity. But you can also be creative, and you can build whatever you want, and you can mod it, and you can do all of these sort of crazy things. So there, we're competing with Minecraft. But we're also technically competing with knitting, because that's also a creative pastime. And if you have a slow-moving city builder game, that is kind of a relaxing experience. So we will also relax our players. And in that case, we're competing against taking a long bath or playing Stardew Valley. Or you just want to do something over a weekend. I'm free, I'm just gonna get really into this. And City Skylines can do that too. It can be a game where you can just play it for hours on end and it has no real ending. So technically, you are now competing with a 50-year-old TV show that has absolutely no ending. So it's just a way of thinking about your game and as not just a game, but also as an experience. And taking that when you look for new audiences and new communities. Like, maybe Minecraft isn't a competitor in any way to City Skylines, but maybe we can provide the same sort of experience as it could do. Like, we're never gonna put marketing money on advertising on Minecraft videos, but we might just want to put something in there about, you know, want to relax a little bit, want to chill, take a bath in cities. Cities, of course, had a very clear competitor. We had very clear competitors in other city building games. So something we did when we started working with cities, again, this was 5 years ago and Paradox was a vastly different company. We had a hard time reaching outside of our grand strategy audience. We weren't always publishing grand strategy games, but we still had a problem getting those players to actually be invested in our product. So what we started doing was that we actually, when we signed City Skylines, we started going through other city builder communities. The example here is from SimCity 4, but we did a lot more than just looking at their Steam hub. And we started looking at what their games did. What kind of jobs did they do? What kind of language was their community speaking? What kind of words did they use to describe their product? What kind of images were they putting up? And can we do the same thing? Without lying, do we do the same thing as them? And we started ticking boxes. We do this, we don't do that. And it turns out we can be pretty similar. We can use their image language in our community and announcement assets. So this was actually learnings from the community that we used in the announcement for City Skylines, just to make sure that we kind of got that thing. But something that also happened, especially around seeing how the state of SimCity was at that point and the state of the online feelings towards SimCity, was that when we did this, it was very clear what we were doing. We were very clearly presenting ourselves as another city building game as kind of like as an alternative. And it went really well. It did everything we wanted it to do. But it also created some comments like this. Because we were currently saying that our game was available offline, which was not like a great thing. But it did work. It got us internet attention. But it also meant that we were getting a lot of negativity for something that, instead of marketing what we did well, we were marketing what somebody else had perceived to fail at. And that builds a toxic community, and that's not what you want. Because we worked really hard with making cities a cute, happy city builder. It is a friendly community. It is a cute city builder with massive cities and cute tilt shift and a bird that wears hats. And this is the kind of tone that we wanted, because we really wanted to make sure that with a game that had so much modding, we needed to have a supportive and nice community that could help one another. Because if they were building stuff on negativity, they would be a negative community. And that would hurt us in the long term. So we spent a lot of time actually just framing this. And today, it is actually a really good community. But I think it's really important to remember this thing. In an online world, your community becomes a part of your brand. And building a good community should be part of your marketing strategy. So if you are a marketing person, talk to your community manager when you plan your marketing campaigns. Because who hasn't heard of great games with terrible communities, where you kind of like really want to play it, but you also don't want to be a part of the community? And we don't want that, and that is something that we can't let toxic players control our games. We should do that. Also, something that is really, really important to mention, I added this slide just today because I forgot to mention it, is that if you are replicating other communities, if you're looking at other people's languages and using that to create your marketing strategy, make sure you do something differently. Whatever it might be. It could be something small. If you want to have examples, I can give you that after the session, but I'm running low on time already to get through all of this. Because if we don't do anything differently, we end up making the same content for the same people over and over and over again, and that's not where we want the industry to go. So hopefully you have now, you got the best of times, right? You've done your foundation work, you have created some happy communities, and now people are really interested in you and your game, and you're speaking their language, and you define the tone, and you have that in your marketing strategy. So during the best of times, what do you do? This is the times where your community is the most happy, the most creative, and the most engaged. And here is where you can kind of future-proof your community for the worst of times, which will come if you have a big community. I'm not saying if, I'm saying when it's gonna happen. Just big communities, it happens. Incentivizing good behavior is something that is really, really important when your community is at its best. Incentivizing good behaviors could be everything from just uplifting people that are being helpful and like thumbing up them, or somebody that shares the kind of screenshots that you want them to share, or somebody that's creating mods. Just make sure that your community knows what kind of behavior and actions and language you like and you think should be associated with your brands. And this is done really easily. It might sound like controlling, but it's actually just making sure that you don't just focus on the people that is complaining about your product, because especially if you're a community manager, it's really easy to spend your days replying to the people that have problems or concerns or are just angry in general. So I think it's very important to just remember to talk to the people who like you as well. Informing the community at Paradox, we work a lot with transparency with our community. So it's very important to us, and hopefully it should be to you too, to be transparent with information to your community to the point where it makes sense. This is really good and very good for reaching your target. If your community reaches places that you don't, then you can use this and the transparency and information to make sure that your message goes with them. Our DLC policy is a really good example of this. We've had a DLC policy or an expansion policies that we've had for almost 10 years. And currently, with a new influx of players, we're seeing a lot of negativity around it because there is a lot of negativity about DLCs in general. But we have been consistent in our messaging around these DLCs for almost 10 years. We've said the same thing. It helps us develop the games further. It helps us move forward with production. And by giving that message to our core fan base, we see that they reply those things at places we can't reach. We can't reach the comment section of a PC Gamer article, but our community can. We can't reach competitor sites' Facebook pages, but our community can. And if they are informed, they can help you spread your message. This is also really important to make sure that they know what you stand for. So make sure they know your community guidelines and make sure they know your values, because they can help spread those as well. And it's really important to make sure, again, stuff doesn't turn toxic. Create with the community. This is just fun. Whatever they're currently doing that you like, for cities, for example, we really like when they create mods. So we try to incentivize mod making through newsletters or presentations, or we just want them to we give them awards, actually, for mods created. Or if it's art, have them make art competitions. Just uplift artists on social media. Maybe pay them to do something official, just to make sure that your community knows what kind of content that you really enjoy, and help them feel like they are being seen when they produce it. Because this is like, I love community creation. That's like one of the best things about being in games, is seeing what other people are capable to do with those games. Yeah, this is the same takeaway. Engaging with the community can make your marketing competitive, even if your wallet is not. I left it in intentionally, because I think it's important, and I'm gonna say it twice. So now we get to the worst of times. Our worst of times came in July last year, when Europa Universalis 4 was being review bombed based on pricing changes that we made on regions that weren't using the euro, the dollar, or the pound. It kind of started slow with just a few people upset about it, and then it snowballed into this spike that you see here on the Steam charts. And it kind of hit us in a bad time, because if you've known a Swede, you know that we are not available in July. It's summer, and we're out of there. So we had a lot of people that had to work a lot of long hours to kind of work with us. So what do you do when something like this happens to you? Evaluate what's going on. Who is doing it? Why? How many are there? How many is really crucial in community management, because you don't know if it's 10,000 people or 100 people on 1,000 accounts. De-escalate the situation. Open up a line of communication, a single thread, usually on your forum, or somewhere where you can actually direct people that have questions or concerns or are just angry, to make sure that they know they're being heard, but also so that you can actually see where all the feedback is happening, and that will help with your evaluation. And it's also very important at this stage to not promise anything, because you haven't done your evaluation yet, and you're not necessarily sure about what's going on. When you have done your evaluation, which happens, again, simultaneously with the de-escalation, it's time to react. What's the correct course of action for this? If these slides seems familiar, it might be because you've seen the series Mindhunter, and I stole it from that for when they're teaching people how to negotiate in hostage situations. So what we did was that we actually admitted that we made a mistake. We rolled back the price changes, and we did offer some compensations to players who had actually bought something during this change. And we also said that we will inform you about changes earlier, and we won't ever promise that we won't do pricing changes again. But what did we learn from this experience? Internal communication. If you're at the company where not all of you are in the same room or in the same Slack channel and you can easily see each other in the eye, internal communication is really important when something like this happens, because usually you will talk to the involved parties and the community team and those will be the people who are working on the problem. Our community team did a hell of a good job with this situation. They worked 24 hours, basically, with just talking to people on the forum and social media. But we forgot that we have a lot of developers and other people within our company that are actually pretty prominent on the internet and who was getting like information and this kind of like negativity directed towards them as well. And we didn't have an internal way of giving constant information and updates about this situation. Another important thing, if you're a community manager, you already know this, but if you're not, it's really important to set internal expectations on what happens if you make changes to something that has gone bad. So let's say, for example, with the price rollback, of course that didn't mean everybody was happy again. It was a step in the correct direction for making them happy, but if a house is on fire, putting out the fire doesn't make the house whole again. You need to actually like put down some work. And that's very important for people to know internally, because if you're not online or with your player base a lot, people have a tendency to be able to think that it's just a quick fix and everything will go back to normal. So that's a good, if you're a community manager, make sure to actually tell your marketing people this, that set the correct expectations internally. Another thing was transparency. Something that we saw from our own community was that when the sort of the dust settled, people weren't that upset about the price change. They were upset that it came from nowhere. Because we have been consistently informing our community about upcoming changes like this before, but we didn't this time. And they saw that as us changing as a company and saw it as kind of a betrayal towards them. So we need to be more transparent and make sure that we weren't being consistent in our language, we weren't being consistent in our actions, and that upset our community. And that upset sort of like their trust in us. So that's also something, if you are being transparent with your community, remember to constantly be transparent about it. If anybody here works with PR, this is also a good learning for PR. For example, if you have, for us, pricing for expansions is sometimes a sensitive subject. So we will go out and tell people about pricing at the earliest possible convenience, just to make sure that that discussion is happening early and not on launch day. Marketing towards and managing a community that is angry, this is where the hard work pays off. I'm just gonna quickly show you this slide. This is the sentiment. This was posted on a BattleTech video that was released 2 days ago. And the first one's serious. He's like, I can't wait for the useless DLC to come. And Daydreamer tells them that, yes, we confirmed DLC. And then we have Moonhowler Coyote, who comes in and says, I can't wait for their useless DLC to come. I love expanding my games and playing it for years. This is our message. This is the thing that we've been telling them. The DLC policy helps us expand your game. So this is where it paid off. Right now, we're seeing like we're slowly gaining back the trust of our community through action and through people like Moonhowler Coyote, who comes in and helps us spread our message where we can't. I am rapidly running out of time, so it's going to be a really quick summary. Community is more than the product of your marketing. It can be one of its core pillars, and it can make you competitive. I've seen that 3 times now, so it must be true. And this was supposed to be the last slide, but then I thought, let's add another one. Don't fake it. If you honestly do not care about your community, if you don't care about how well it's thriving or what it's doing, that's fine. That's you do you. But don't pretend to do it. If your game doesn't fit those jobs or kind of fits within the community that you want it to fit within, don't try to force it in there. Try to be honest with the people online and be honest towards the product that you are marketing. Because people online are annoyingly smart and they will catch you doing it. Thank you.